Most horror films present audiences with a clearly identifiable monster. Whether it is a masked killer, supernatural force, or a grotesque creature lurking in the shadows, the threat is usually external. Kane Parsons' The Backrooms initially appears to follow this tradition, its endless yellow corridors, distorted creatures, and the pirate Clark figure being the final antagonist of the film all leads us to believe that the villain is a physical entity. However, when you take a deeper look, there's something far more disturbing in this film. The true villain of The Backrooms is not the monster, it's not even the labyrinth. The real horror lies in the idea that when we as humans have to face pain, when we have to face hardship, instead of tackling it head on, we decide to abandon our humanity and live in a world of comfort, one that is safe and one that we can control. A world without the ability for free thought or human expression, an echo chamber. This is the hauntingly real, unsaid true villain of the film, artificial intelligence. This idea is represented through The Backrooms as being a manifestation of the brain's inner thoughts, of our subconscious minds. And once we lose the ability to use our brains consciously, to think for ourselves and instead write prompts resulting in computer-generated content rather than genuine human introspection, once we lose the ability to interact with real people by spending hours with AI chatbots instead of humans, we become exactly like Clark, the film's protagonist. Interestingly, Clark is a representation in the film of a person that is so deeply entrenched in artificial generation that he loses his humanity. Clark is a disgruntled character who has ruined his marriage, his dreams of being an architect, and is rendered to just sleeping on a bed at the bottom of his cheap furniture store alone. His therapist Mary describes perfectly to him in their first session of the film the reason why Clark resorts to the backrooms, or why people resort to artificial intelligence in the modern world.
We all have our loops, our habits, behaviors that keep us walking in circles, reaching for the same solutions over and over again, thinking each time they'll take you somewhere new, but they don't. And still, it's the neural pathway of least resistance, a path you made. It's the one that kept you safe when you were a child.
Mary states that constantly living in a loop, constantly reaching for the same solutions is tranquil, it's peaceful, rather than growing from our trauma we live in it, as it's the normal pathway of least resistance. Clark in this film feels unsafe and perplexed by the real world.
I hurt people. I don't want to, it's just the way I'm wired, so maybe I deserve to be alone.
He cannot stand people and the idea that he cannot control what is around him. It's why he incessantly claims he's an architect. So what does he do to remedy this pain? He discovers the backrooms, and upon discovering it, he becomes the physical architect of this space. Mirroring strikingly, as if putting in a prompt on ChatGPT, Clark creates a reality that is entirely his own, one that he can control. When you enter the backrooms, it becomes your subconscious. You dictate what the backrooms creates, but it only becomes the faint memories that you remember, rather than the real world.
It's like describing a dog to someone who's never seen a dog, then asking them to try.
Because of this, everything in the backrooms feels eerily similar to the real thing, but is at the same time completely off. The stop signs are reversed, the people's faces contain multiple eyes, the items sink into the floor, and this feeling mirrors what is often described as the uncanny valley. AI-generated images can resemble photographs while containing subtle distortions. AI-generated writing can mimic human language while lacking genuine understanding. Have a look at this AI movie scene. It seems like it's recreating reality, but there's something about it that just feels off.
Stay together! What the fuck is this bullshit? No!
This is demonstrated effectively in the backrooms, showing how strange the world becomes the more it is generated, and the further we go into the depths of our mind and out of reality. The maze absorbs memories, architecture, emotions, and experiences from the people who enter it. It uses these elements as raw material. Rather than creating original environments, it reconstructs distorted versions of reality, as AI does, simply using the pre-existing data. Familiar locations emerge, but something is always wrong. Rooms appear incomplete, hallways connect illogically, objects occupy impossible positions. The Backrooms understands what a room looks like, but not what a room is for. They understand the visual language of reality without understanding its meaning. The dinner scene exemplifies this perfectly and is terrifying because it resembles the way modern artificial intelligence recreates human expression. Everything appears technically accurate. The participants perform the expected actions, conversations occur, social rituals are maintained, yet the warmth, spontaneity, and the authentic emotion are truly absent. This scene creates the unsettling sensation that something fundamental is missing. Setting the scene at a dinner table feels symbolically significant. Traditionally, dinner represents community. Families gather around tables to share stories, celebrate achievements, and strengthen emotional bonds. Yet here the dinner lacks humanity and is simply controlled by Clark, scarily reflecting artificial intelligence and how it creates a world that lacks true soul. Modern AI systems are trained by scraping vast amounts of human-created data. They absorb information, identify patterns, and generate approximations of human creativity. Yet they do not truly understand the material that they reproduce. Instead, they assemble fragments into new combinations that often feel familiar yet strangely incorrect. The Backrooms operates accordingly by precisely the same principle, and the generated people of the Backrooms represent this effectively. Constructed from harvested memories and emotional fragments from Clark's subconscious, they resemble humanity while lacking its essential qualities. Their faces appear unfinished, their speech consists of distorted fragments. Their behaviors imitate human interaction without understanding it. They are synthetic people. The horror emerges not because they are monstrous, but because they are recognizable. They represent what happens when humanity becomes data. This is where the film's critique of artificial intelligence becomes most explicit. The still lifes embody the fear that technology may eventually consume human creativity, identity, and emotion only to produce hollow imitations. They are humanity reduced to patterns, form without soul. However, the director Kane Parsons doesn't just simply show us this idea of AI, but rather uses it to create a compelling antagonist in the film, with the pirate Clark being a literal embodiment of artificial intelligence. One that represents what will happen when we choose to lose our humanity and instead live in a safe world, devoid of criticism and the nuance of people. While Clark builds a reality that is similar to this world, it lacks any genuine soul to it, and instead reflects exactly his own feelings about a situation and his own opinions. His wife appears as a woman who does not speak, she just obeys. Her face is distorted to replicate his view of her. The Backrooms is Clark's mind, but it is only what he thinks is reality, rather than what reality actually is. Clark believes that he was not the issue in the failure of his marriage, and rather his wife was, and believes that every problem in his life is just not his fault. The Backrooms being a physical manifestation of Clark's mind allows him to live in this delusion, live in his perfect world where he can entirely control the narrative.
Well, I want you to tell me that I didn't do anything wrong.
This brings Clark joy. He revels in the idea that he can control everything around him and prefers it to the actual real world. This film powerfully shows how when someone experiences trauma or pain, they can try to create a safe space around them, try to control what's in their life, and the Backrooms is Clark's safe space, but in a very dark and twisted way. With artificial intelligence like Clark, we can entirely create our own reality. However, when Mary enters the Backrooms, it is an invasion on the idea of Clark's completely constructed world. Clark despises that a human with genuine depth and opinions is invading in his generated reality, a person that he has no control over. This is a dark take on what artificial intelligence could become, a world where we lose all humanity, one where everything is simply generated and controlled by computers. Clark tries to turn Mary into something he can control. He pleads with Mary to confirm to him that his thoughts about his wife, about his trauma are valid, that he is right in this situation. He tries to force this belief out of her, even though he knows she doesn't truly agree. This is shockingly reminiscent of how AI allows us to have the control over our own world. It allows you to generate whatever you like, create whatever you please. However, AI thinks what it's showing is reality, but in fact it lacks any of the depth that humanity genuinely has. AI constantly agrees with you. Whatever prompt you enter, it will tell you that you're right. You are never the problem. You can write a prompt into AI asking if you're the right person in the divorce with your wife, and because it has no critical thinking, no genuine soul or introspection, it will simply tell you just exactly what you want to hear. Clark abandons a real therapist, one with humanity and opinions, for an artificial world, one that will show him exactly what he wants. An echo chamber. Clark tries to turn Mary into sort of an AI therapist, attempting to get her to agree with whatever he wants, but when he realizes she cannot be controlled, he agrees to let her out of this world. Kane Parsons uses the symbolism of artificial intelligence and the generated world of the Backrooms to reflect how people respond to trauma and respond to the pain in the world around them. Do they work through trauma and grow as a person, or do they resort to generating a world where they live in this pain? They live in the past and constantly try to reflect on things instead of moving forward. Clark and Mary in this film are effective parallels to each other for this very concept, and Parsons uses the backdrop of AI to create an extremely compelling narrative on trauma here. We firstly see Mary with her agoraphobic mother placing her hand on the concrete floor outside of their home. Mary's mother is fearful of leaving this home because it's her safe haven, and this idea is represented through each character in the film. Mary, in response to her trauma, builds this safe haven, a rock wall around herself, one that seemingly cannot be penetrated, to ensure that she feels safe and sane. Mary attempts to grow from her trauma, attempts to build a life out of it because she could not save her mother from her mental illness. She chooses to try and help others. However, throughout the film, Mary learns that it's not possible to save everyone, as some people are stuck with this rigid rock wall around them that's impenetrable. Clark is reflective of people who believe that their trauma dictates who they are. They live in the hurt from their past and believe that living as an angry, bitter person is just how they're wired. But Mary shows how you can grow from your trauma, you can help others, and you can change. The final moment where Mary breaks the rock on this twisted version of Clark symbolically shows her breaking this wall that she puts up to protect herself. Instead of keeping the memento of her past, she smashes it to defeat a physical manifestation of the choice to live in your trauma rather than to grow from it. The pirate Clark is presented as the overarching villain of the film, but in reality he's actually a manifestation of the result of generative AI, as well as the result of how living in the pain of your past can cause you to stay in a cycle, like Mary talks about at the start of the film. You're constantly stuck in this loop, and Clark lives in this loop. He chooses to stay in the Backrooms and to revel in the pain from his divorce, rather than to move past it and to grow. This deformed version of Clark represents who he aspires to be in the film. The pirate is born from and lives in Clark's trauma, but he doesn't have to feel any of it. He has no emotion and he has no humanity. It's essentially the AI version of Clark, and he aspires to be this soulless being throughout the film. Imposingly, when Mary walks through the back room, she sees the trap that her mother kept her in. A mother who feared leaving the home, feared entering the outside world because of the reality of life, and how not everything can be perfect and meticulously designed as she wants it to be, as Clark wants it to be. Clark is a dark reflection of Mary's mother, also fearing the outside world because of the reality of humanity, and instead choosing to control the environment around him. Both Mary's mother and Clark want to live in their artificial idea of the world, rather than as a part of actual humanity, and when Mary realizes this, then she defeatingly states that she cannot help Clark, just as she could not help her mother. The world of the Backrooms for her is a trap, confining her from reality and keeping her in an artificially generated world. For Clark, it is his safe haven, and Mary also lives in her own safe haven, a world of walls she has built around herself through her job, through her book, and keeping the rock to represent the hard rock wall that keeps her safe. Even when the construction workers destroy the concrete in the opening of the film, Mary holds on to it, because while she was trying to grow from her past, she still has not completely moved past it, and instead keeps a part of the concrete close to her, until she finally realizes that there is no use holding onto your past, and she finally breaks free from it. The pirate Clark actually represents Mary's mother, a person who lives in an artificial world hiding from humanity, and the Backrooms for her represents an unhealthy attachment to this concept of a safe haven, and when she smashes this rock, it allows her to physically fight back against her trauma, fight back against the monster of the Backrooms, the representation of the trapped world that her mother has kept her in. She can finally separate herself from this safe haven. She doesn't need to bring this rock with her everywhere she goes anymore, to protect and build walls in her mind, but now she can take autonomy for herself, because she is human. Mary in this moment is essentially using the only physical thing from the outside to attack an artificial being. We're representing the triumph of a free-thinking human being over a non-sentient, generated figure. This is an ultimate moment of power for Mary and allows us as an audience to feel some triumph for her. However, Parsons cleverly ends this film by showing us that Mary's duplicate is now trapped in the Backrooms, representing how once AI gains knowledge of any human, there exists a copy within the machine's mind, one that is devoid of the humanity of the person and is instead just an emotionless replica. The real villain of the Backrooms is the loss of humanity, of autonomy, when we allow our minds to be controlled by pain, by fear, and we live in it rather than trying to change, trying to grow as people. That instead we try to control what we can in our world and the people around us and just live in an echo chamber, believing that when we hurt others, the way we act is excusable. It's not our fault, but in reality, like Mary, we need to confront our trauma. As she physically confronts the pirate, the dark, twisted, artificial image that represents the inability for her to save her mother or to save Clark. Clark claims he is just wired that way, and that he is like the artificial version of him, but the film is trying to use AI to tell us that we are not just wired that way. Our brains are complex, they can change, we can grow because we are people and we are humans. Clark believes that he is one and the same as his artificial counterpart, but he is not. The AI Clark is incapable of change, incapable of free thought or expression because he literally is just wired that way by Clark, the architect. I think the ultimate message that Parsons is trying to portray here through this AI commentary is that we are not simply stuck in one way. If we were, we would be robots. We would be generated artificial beings like the AI pirate Clark. So ultimately, the true villain of the Backrooms movie is artificial intelligence, because it represents what will happen if we refuse to change our flaws as people, if we live in pain and believe that it's who we are, and if we constantly believe that we, like an artificial generation, are just wired that way.
But it's just the way you're wired, isn't it?
It's just the way I'm wired.